Hi, I'm Edward Funk, and this is going to be podcast number 64. Loretta Young's secret baby is born in a clandestine location. A couple things. This is all coming from this book, Behind the Door, The Real Story of Loretta Young. Available as a paper book, ebook, and audiobook. It's the only one of my books that is an audiobook. And I think you can see, I hope you can see that I have all 12 of my books behind me, just a little promotion. And the other thing, it's winter. I live in Indianapolis, Indiana. We had some snow overnight. So to, counteract that, I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt that I could wear in the spring. Anyway, here we go. Podcast 64. Loretta and her mother returned to the United States after 2.5 months abroad. Sisters Polly Ann and Sally met them at the train station in Pasadena. A lot of times celebrities got off at Pasadena rather than the Los Angeles station because it wasn't very busy and there wouldn't be a lot of fans coming at them and they'd have more anonymity. So at first sight, Sally thought Loretta had lost a baby and then realized that she was holding her body so tight as not to show. This realization made Sally feel increased compassion for her younger sister. Once home, Dr. Holloran issued a statement explaining that Loretta continued to suffer from exhaustion and the bed rest would be needed if she was to recover her full energy. Now, today it's hard to appreciate that the scandal of Loretta having a child out of wedlock could have had repercussions felt by her whole family. It even threatened Polly Ann's engagement to businessman Carter Herman, a member of a socially prominent Pasadena family. Polly Ann explained, Carter had kept asking me why I hadn't set a date for our wedding. His parents wanted to know. I finally decided to tell him about Loretta's situation. And then, if he didn't want to go through with it, he was free to go. I didn't want to sway him. I was still reluctant and added, I don't want your parents hurt by this scandal. So wait until the birth of the child and everything goes right. Then I'll set a date. He understood. Loretta's activities out of the house during these final 2 months were strictly nocturnal. Sally recalled, we wait until late at night and we drive the car to an unfamiliar neighborhood and Loretta would get out and walk. It was important to make sure that she was getting enough exercise for herself and the baby. Sally, too, had become engaged, and it wasn't her nature to be concerned about the repercussions of a scandal. The prospective groom was Norman Foster, an actor who had worked with Loretta as a leading man in some of the earlier films. He changed his focus to directing and had worked himself into the good graces of Saul Wurtzel, a producer at Fox. Saul Wurtzel, those productions were kind of the B productions at Fox. They weren't even at the same studio. I mean, physically studio. Gladys was not enthusiastic about Norman. Sally hypothesized, since I'd had so many beaux who had a lot of money, and some of them actually titles, I think Mama expected me to marry wealth. She had married someone who wasn't wealthy and found out that it brought her a lot of difficult days. Norman wasn't Catholic, so they were married in the living room of the home located on Sunset Boulevard. There we go. A Catholic priest officiated. The date was October 8, 1935. Sally recalled a conversation with Loretta just before the ceremony. Loretta was in her room and I went in to give her a kiss. What she said surprised me. She said, honey, If you don't really want to get married, back out now. You don't have to, you know. She felt that Norman was immature and that older men made better husbands. I just thought it was so sweet of her that she cared so much about me and that she had the courage to suggest something like that, considering all the guests were already downstairs. And just the fact that she was upstairs and couldn't come down, it made me cry. I came out of the hall, and my brother was there to walk me down the steps. And with his big hands, he kept patting me on the way down the steps. I cried all the way through the wedding, and nobody knew why. I remember Dorothy Parker asking me, "Sally, for God's sakes, what made you cry?" I said, "Well, I haven't any idea." Then I said, "Well, I had a fight with Mama this morning," and I did too. Loretta had few visitors. Fan magazine Dorothy Manners and her husband Walter Ramsey were two who did see her. Dorothy Manners remembered Motion Picture Magazine had scheduled Loretta a picture of Loretta for the cover, and I needed an interview for the feature article. Here was this poor dear. I had heard the rumors that the trip to Europe was concocted to conceal a pregnancy, but I decided to give Loretta the benefit of the doubt. One day, Spencer Tracy telephoned, and if you haven't been following these podcasts, Spencer Tracy, just put it this way, Spencer Tracy was the love of Loretta's life, but it fell through because they were both Catholic and he was already married. So anyway, so back, he's visiting. He said, "I understand that you're not feeling too well. I'd like to come over and say hello." I froze. Just the sound of his voice made my heart jump. I said, "Oh, Spence, I don't think so." He said, "Just for old times' sake, I just want to see that you're all right and bring you a box of candy. That's all." Spencer came over that afternoon. They were both reticent and exchanged pleasantries. Nothing personal was discussed until they started to leave. Then he said gently, "I love you." Loretta said, "I know. I love you too." 60 years later, Loretta was still convinced that by bundling up under the comforters during that visit, Spencer never suspected that she was pregnant, an assumption very likely untrue. Loretta was convinced a lot of people around her didn't know her situation. In fact, they did. One day, Josie Wayne walked in the back door, and we know Josie from several past podcasts. She's John Wayne's first wife, and she would have still been married to him at this point. Walked in the back door while Loretta's sitting in the kitchen chair. Josie threw her arms all around Loretta's middle to give her a hug. Once again, Loretta froze and said nothing. In fact, the two women would remain best friends their entire lives, and the subject of Judy and Clark never surfaced. I know this because Josie told me. Loretta also believed that her sister Georgiana at age 12 was too young to realize what was going on during Loretta's pregnancy. Georgiana did know. She also told me she did, but again, the subject would never be discussed, the two, throughout their lives. The house that Gladys selected as the location for Loretta to give birth was in the newly developed community of Venice, California, a Los Angeles beach town just south of Santa Monica. Pollyann recalled it was 2 stories, and it was the only house on the block except for one directly across the street. But that house was on another level, so it didn't seem so close. Gladys had made the necessary preparations, including borrowing Sally's massage table and having it set up in an upstairs bedroom that would serve as the delivery room. Pollyann described how all the plans went into effect on November 21st, 1935. We took Loretta down the night before, and the next day, Carter, that's Pollyann's fiance, drove Dr. Halloran. He left his own car at the Sunset. Dr. Halloran left his own car at the Sunset House. When Carter would drive in, he would drive right into the garage, which was hidden from the street. It was under the house, and since you went down, no one could really see who was coming and going. Pollyann continued. On the day that the baby was born, that was November 22nd, 1935, here's who was in the house. Loretta and the doctor, a nurse who we called Frenchie, Carter, and I. No one else. We had put blankets on the windows on the bedroom where Loretta was to give birth to muffle the sounds that she might make during labor. The only people we were concerned about were the people across the street. The doctor arrived around noon, and shortly after that, I remember looking out the living room window and seeing a convertible parked on the street. There was a man in the driver's seat and a woman sitting on the other side, and they didn't seem to get out or doing anything. I mentioned it to the doctor, and he said, "That's all right, Polly. That's another doctor, just in case. He won't come in. I'll just go and nod to him when he can leave." So, again, we're listening to the voice of Pollyann. Suppose something had gone wrong. Suppose Loretta and the baby needed attention of a doctor at the same time. Dr. Holleran had thought that through. I was waiting downstairs until the doctor asked me to come up. He needed a little help. He wanted me to help support Loretta's feet while the baby was being born. I remember feeling queasy and Dr. Holleran telling me, "Just look down." I wondered how my sister could have taken it all. She'd only had some chloroform for an anesthetic. I wouldn't say it was a difficult birth, but all births are not easy, particularly so for this mother who tried so hard to contain her pain. I don't remember that it took too long. I was still too close to fainting, so the doctor said I could leave. I think the baby was born somewhere between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. Loretta selected the name of Judy in honor of the saint, St. Jude, the patron saint for impossible situations. I did see the baby right after she was born. I realized the doctor and the nurse had a lot of work to do. The baby was being cleaned and dressed, and they were taking care of Loretta, and I would have been in the way. He didn't want some woman on the floor passed out. He didn't need that. The doctor left instructions for the nurse, and Carter took him back in the car around 5 p.m. Carter and I went up to see the baby about 8 or 9. She was a sweet baby girl. Later that evening, we took my mother down to see the baby. She just loved holding her. But the drama of the secret baby was far from over. So tune in for podcast 65. Please do. Thank you.